This is moving from the macroeconomic to the microeconomic, but it relates to every one of you. To you personally, to your family, to your friends, to your customers, to culture. This is an existential crisis that's under-recognized, I believe, that I'd like to share with you. It has to do with our health and where we're going and how it relates to our demographic transition and the cost of aging. So I'm going to start with a story. You wonder why I'm carrying this prop. So recently I was at a meeting with a good friend of mine who is a very well-respected medical doctor, surgeon, who has had a personal kind of epiphany in his life, and he decided to give up his surgical practice and start to develop longevity centers, of which he now is the principal owner and founder of the largest number of longevity medicine centers in the United States, over 30 centers around the country. And so we got into a conversation, and he has access to all the latest technologies as to how to evaluate aging. And I said, so in terms of the tools that you use, what would you consider the singular most important assessment tool for assessing the level of biological aging of your clientele? Not your chronological aging, which you can get off your birthdays, but biological aging. He said, oh, well, that's simple. It's this. It's the hand dynamometer. It's a grip strength tester. Now, 10 years ago, I started talking about grip strength to medical audiences, and they thought I was crazy when I talked about this as a surrogate marker for metabolic biological aging. Bilateral grip strength over time is the best singular physical assessment you can use to assess biological aging. Now, how does that relate to anything? That's going to be the topic that I'm going to be describing for you here in the next few moments. Because what we are really talking about is that we are, as a culture, are aging very rapidly. The demographics of the country that you've heard, actually it's happening in the whole world, is that 1 in 6 people will be over the age of 60, that we see that there will be 2.1 billion people over 60 years of age, that 80% people 80 years of age or older will be tripling in their number. And the question is, what will be their function? What will be their biological capability as they grow older? So it's not longevity for the sake of years and birthdays. It's longevity for the sake of functional capability. That's physical function, metabolic function, cognitive function, and behavioral function. Those roll up then to define our vitality as a human being, our capability of being resilient. Well, I have a good friend, Christopher Murray, who some of you may know. He has been called the doctor for a billion patients. He started the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington a number of years ago with a Bill Gates and foundational grant that's now actually taken over what used to be the World Health Organization in terms of data projection. And he has been looking at and developed what are called QALYs and DALYs, quality adjusted life years and disability adjusted life years that relate to HALES. That's your healthy life expectancy. And there's a very big difference between life expectancy and quality life expectancy, disease-free life expectancy. So what we should really be measuring is qualities in DALYs and how they relate to HALES. So that is this global birth of disease framework that they've developed with this large statistical network of, by the way, over 12,000 statistical scientists, epidemiologists around the world working collaboratively. And what they find is that there are specific kinds of physiological characteristics that are associated with accelerated biological aging and decrements of their function. Those include cardiometabolic disease like insulin resistance and obesity, neurodegenerative disease that you're probably familiar with. We think of Alzheimer's, but there are many cognitive disorders that precede Alzheimer's, precancer development, autoimmune disorders, of which there are 88 different diagnoses of different autoimmune diseases, and increased vulnerability to infection. These are the dominant factors that determine capabilities in people to be resilient against the world in which they're living. So what are the implications of population health from this? Well, we then ultimately say that we better be more focused on preventive-focused health strategies. We need to use targeted interventions that address these risk factors that are associated with personalization of each and every one of our lives so that we can maximize our health span. And we need systems that improve resilience. What are the strategic implementation and interpretation of this? We need to go and start looking at how this affects DALYs and QALYs and then translates into what's going on in societies and the deployment of capital to keep people still functioning as they grow older when they're disabled. So this leads to this paper that was published this fall. I think it's a landmark paper. This is a paper in which it describes a study of 17,500 people over a number of years looking at their ability to live healthily after as they age. And what they found is that people that had high immune system resilience, as contrasted to people with low immune system resilience, lived on average 15.5 years longer. Now, if I told you that I could give you a pill that would extend your productive life by 15 and a half years, you might be interested in that. And that pill is called lifestyle intervention. That pill is called a new philosophy about healthcare that lowers the risk to disability and improves your DALYs. That's the new medicine of tomorrow. That is the medicine that unburdens our society with unnecessary health expense, but more importantly, it improves the functional capabilities of being free living and capable of doing the best of what their genes are potentially able to do. So aging is not the real issue here. It's really frailty. And frailty is seen in not just this older age person like my wife and I, we're involved with parenting all four of our parents through their later stages of life in terminal centers. It's a very discouraging thing to go through. And what you would like to do is rectangularize survival so that you lived healthily and functional up to the last minute when your body was just kind of worn out and you passed on at night and sleeping to the next regime. That would be the ideal, compressing of morbidity and extending your health span. How do you do that? Well, what we know is that if you don't do that, you have a huge economic burden because healthcare expenses go way up. I can assure you the cost of people in care centers is extraordinarily costly. You've got housing issues, you've got transportation issues, you've got a changing of workforce that is less productive, more days of absenteeism, more cognitive dysfunction, less capable of staying at task. You've got an infrastructure change as to how you're going to design your society, all of which costs money and resources to maintain. And then you have the whole insurance system. How is that going to work out as we move forward with an aging society that's not resilient, actually having these problems of disability? So 75% of our deaths, as you know, occur by chronic, long-term accumulative illnesses. Not just the immediate sense that you woke up with a heart attack on Monday morning, but you started to depreciate your function over time. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurodegeneration, immune dysfunction don't occur overnight. They occur over years of lack of understanding of how to manage the genetic potential of an individual in their environment to improve not only their function each day, but their workplace capability of being at their best. So if we look at frailty as a massive cost, this is a seismic issue that we're going to be addressing by huge capital resources in order to keep less than fully capable people that are frail engaged still in living. So it's not how long they live, it's the quality of their life. Assisted living, long-term care, mobility services, caregiver labor, home modifications, home care, all these become parts of the economic burden of a less than healthy population. So modern cities then have to construct themselves in such a way to manage these conditions of frailty. Now I want to emphasize, when I say frailty, I don't just mean frailty of physical function on a walker or on a mobile device. I'm talking about frailty of your full metabolic system. I'm talking about frailty of your structure function. I'm talking about frailty of your ability to think clearly and to pull back thoughts and to organize your thinking. I'm talking about behavioral problems that relate to dysfunction and frailty that can allow you to be less stress compliant and less resilient. All of those are part of the network that we see going all the way from ADHD in children to the older age individual with cognitive dysfunction and dementia. They're all related to a system that the good news is modifiable. And that's the theme for this talk. It's modifiable, but we have to understand how it's interconnected. Now I'm reminded when I look up here at standing on the stage at the beautiful blue sky, and I think of the energy discussions we've been having in previous speakers. Think of what goes on right now on our agricultural lands. This is one of the great energy processing centers in the universe, right? What happens is photons of light are picked up by plants through the chlorophyll that transduces that energy into some kind of a cellular protoplasm by using a gas, carbon dioxide, to produce then proteins, carbohydrates, and fat. Think of that as a remarkable energy processing center. Now, how does that work? It can work in two ways. It can work to produce a lot of calories, or it can work to produce a lot of nutrients. What is the food then that ultimately are delivered by that energy processing system? Is it food that's going to nourish people to be on the side of resilience, or is it going to be food that produces an individual whose immune system is under alarm, thinking they're eating hostile things, for which then their body has to respond, which are called immunological disorders. Immunity is the touch point that then is the upstream event that causes these downstream chronic illnesses to occur. Not just a defense against infection, the whole nature of your body being rebuilt constantly by your immune system. It's one of the only two systems in the body that works in every organ 24/7, 365. The other one is the nervous system. The nervous and immune systems are constantly communicating with one another to tell our inside body, every organ of our body, how to respond to the outside world. Therefore, an immune system that's compromised, that's less resilient, that is biologically aged, is an immune system that translates into frailty. Frailty on many, many levels. So how can you then do something about your immune system? Well, we're starting to see geoscience, the science of aging, start to tell us that there are key mechanisms of aging. Chronic inflammation, mitochondrial bioenergetic dysfunction, where the energy process centers of our cells are gaining energy from food and converting it into motive and cerebral energy. Our immune remodeling, our epigenetic drift, and cellular senescence are all tied to our biological aging process. The good news is they're all modifiable. They're modifiable by sending the right information to our immune system. If we send dysfunctional information to our immune system from toxins, pollutants, from foods that contain ingredients that our immune system considers to be not friends but foe, our immune system does what it's supposed to be. It fights back. That's called chronic inflammation. That's called inflammation. That's called cellular senescence. So we're starting to see that maybe a central principle of how we would think of food as medicine is tied then into our immune system patency and how we eat and how we live. So frailty is preventable. The 6 pillars of the Healthspan model that are emerging out of geoscience literature: early detection of risk, muscle preservation so you don't have sarcopenia, you can get up and move around without assistance, metabolic flexibility, which has to do with the ability of your body to respond to changes and things that occur because you're not always eating the perfect diet or in the perfect environment, so you have to have resilience to your own environment, neuroimmune resilience, food system alignment, then in age-friendly environments, all then take us from reactive care to prospective health care. That is a new investment opportunity from which energy of our economy can be deployed to then prevent frailty, which is a major threat to our economic survival. Now, we have seen a tremendous change over the last 5 years in thinking about how nutrition actually influences our health outcomes. I'm just going to give a top of the line of this. It's a deeper topic, but it's called nutritional epigenetics. What is that all about? Well, your genes, are encoded in 23 chapters of your life. It's called your genome. 23 chapters, half of which are written by your biological mother, the other half by your biological father. A lot of people feel that we're locked in stone once we get that gift from our parents and there's nothing we can do about it. But now it's recognized that no, that message that's in our genome can be modified in how it's expressed based upon the experience of our life, how we eat, think, act, and who we hang out with. That is called epigenetics. Now, it turns out that my little company, Big Bold Health, has been looking at how diet influences epigenetics of the immune system. We published a paper in 2024 in which we showed by intervention with a single food that we could modulate immune system action and reduce the rate of immune aging by 47%. That had never been reported ever before, that food had that dramatic potential effect upon immune system function. We are now engaged and will finish as of this month in 850 double-blind placebo-controlled trials, standard of gold, about a single food against immune system outcome, epigenetic, and brain health. This is the largest trial ever been done anywhere in the world, in which we will have a database of several terabytes to understand exactly how food interacts with our function in such a way as to modulate how our genes are expressed, the epigenetic model. Now think about it if you would. What are we talking about with epigenetics? We're talking about the ability of your genes to be imprinted with messages that tells them what genes to be turned on and what genes to be turned off. Turn off the alarm genes that are related to inflammatory mediators, turn on the reconstitution genes that are related to reconstitution of body function. That's occurring all the time. That's the negotiation that your body's doing in real time. Hopefully you're in an environment where you're turning on the genes that are related to replication of your health versus turning on the genes that are related to danger signals. All of that is modifiable if you ask the right questions and you provide the right information. Information is food. We don't eat calories, we eat information. Information in our food modulates how our genes are expressed, giving rise to our outcomes. So the future growth sectors are these longevity diagnostics, really looking. Here I have wearables. I showed you the grip strength tester. There are many, many new tools that are traveling with us that allow us to interrogate our body in ways that no human being has ever had before. To go to the cloud, to do assessment, and come back to us with personalized information about how to navigate this trajectory of our life. That, to me, reduces the burden of unnecessary disease. That improves its functional outcome. That has a huge economic effect on the deployment of capital for people that are frail. So if we really look at where we stand right now as a society, we stand at a pivotal moment. We have the tools, we have the information. These breakthroughs that I've just described are 10 to 15 years in their finding. And how are we going to use them? To create a different culture that will change the microeconomic evaluation of each of our lives into a macroeconomic sea change that will create a different deployment of capital to allow people to be fully competent for a century of good living. That is this opportunity, but it's also the challenge. And what I would say is long lives with frailty is not the answer. What we're really talking about is long lives with vitality by leveraging this new information in such a way that the outcomes will produce a century of good living. Thanks very much.